Well, welcome back to another episode of Try It Thursdays. And I'm so excited about today's guest. She is a mother and of almost a dozen, man, good for you, and a woman of deep faith and a gifted storyteller. Please welcome Grandma Patches. And she is currently working on a children's book series that teaches Yah's redemptive plan through rhyme in a way that's fun, simple, and deeply rooted in the truth of Scripture. So, Grandma Patches, I'm thrilled to have you here. Can you start by telling us a little bit about your journey to faith and what inspired you to start writing? I guess first of all, before that, I just have to say I love from one grandma to another. Welcome, because being a grandma is like the best part of life. It really is a beautiful thing. So, but yes, what inspired you to start writing?
Okay, my writing, we've been keeping the feast days for about 28 years, almost 29. We started while we were pretty young, in our early 20s. And the Father just was showing us way back then, just things that were not lining up where we were fellowshipping. And so, in the way He does things, when you're hungry or when you're searching, He brings the people into your life. And that's pretty much the short story of how we came to following God's ways, Jehovah's ways, and His feast days and His commandments, just kind of through realizing things weren't quite as they seemed as you were walking out your faith. And so it's good to be in dry places is what I learned, and I have to remind myself of that. When you're in a dry place where you feel like things are not connecting, or that He could be stirring something in you, that there's something deeper, and to remember that. And how many times at my age, as a grandma in my 50s, and I still get to that dry place, and then I wonder, where are you? And it's almost like the children of Israel. I can relate to them so much because I'm
Right.
I always go back, and it's like I need to learn to trust in those dry places. So I'm learning that, still learning that.
You are so speaking to me right now because I've been struggling the past couple weeks because I'm in one of those dry places, and a lot of the women that I fellowship with, they're getting these like crazy downloads and just amazing things, and I'm just like, what's wrong with me? But
Yeah,
then, in seeking Him, He's just like, we're in process, and I'm taking you somewhere deeper, and but we're taking the steps to that place, because if I
right,
jumped you straight into that place, it would be too much. So we're
right.
preparing along the journey, which is,
Hmm.
like you said, a lot of what happened with Israel on their
Yes,
journey.
yes,
So
yes. Yeah.
I would imagine, with having almost a dozen children, all natural born, your children, you
Except for the first one. First one was C-section, but after
okay,
that,
but I mean, but
they're,
they're all
they're all
your
mine. Yeah, they're
biological
all mine.
children.
Yeah.
Wow. And being in Torah for that long, that is just because most of the people that I was exposed to it, but I have to quite honestly say I was not hungry enough or willing to give up the world to
Mhm.
make that step. So I was enticed and intrigued, but not enough to change my lifestyle with going to church and even outside of church and everything. So, but it took a very difficult place to bring me into, wait a minute, I want this more than I want anything else. And then when you get
Mhm.
to that place is when you really start to go, wait, the Bible says this. Wait,
Right,
why are they saying that? The Bible says this. Oh,
right.
that's what she was talking about 20 years ago when I first was exposed. I
Right,
get it
right.
now. So,
Yes,
so I
yes.
imagine having almost a dozen children is what inspired you to start writing children's book, I would think, and then having grandchildren, and like you said, wanting to, you know, I would imagine, because we do have to explain it to our children.
Right.
And
Yes.
so,
Yes.
and I did read on your website,
Website? Yeah.
yes, website, that you came to faith at 17 years old.
Yes.
Um, and
Mhm.
is that a story you want to share? Because it's a really powerful story.
Sure, I can talk about it. I grew up in a secular home. and really didn't know much about God. I think the most I knew about him was a friend of mine, I think, invited me maybe 2 or 3 years in a row to go to the vacation Bible that they have in the summertime, and you go there for a week. And here and there, maybe I dropped in at a church or something, but that was the extent of what I was exposed to. My family did have a Bible in the house. And of course, I was an avid TV watcher at the time, so I've always got exposed to Christmas and Easter. And we all know how we feel about those, but I'm just saying that was my exposure. And so then I always found myself reading Genesis. And as I was growing up, I would open that Bible, that big family Bible, and I would be reading through that. And I would get to the part where after the flood and then all the names and all that, and then I would always close my Bible at that point because it just kind of it gets kind of, to me at the time, I didn't know what I was reading. I didn't understand it. So I just closed it and I put it away. And I feel like the Father was just using that, the little bit of exposure that I had here and there, and then the Bible that I would read on my own was, planting seeds. And so at 17, I found myself in a crisis pregnancy. My mother was married twice. My brother had died 2 years before that. My father had died a year before that. And my mother was diagnosed with a terminal illness. And there was just a lot going on in my life. My sister was in a volatile relationship, and it just was a little crazy. And so, unfortunately, I found myself pregnant. But, these children have a way of turning you around. And you start to really, even at 17, I was like, I didn't even know I was searching for God. And I was, advised, maybe I'm going to go to the crisis, go to the local pregnancy center and talk to somebody. And I had called them earlier looking for a doctor because it's a crisis pregnancy center. So I called them thinking they'd have a doctor. And they, let me know and said, hey, you can come in here for counseling. And I'm like, I don't need to talk to anybody. I need a doctor. But anyway, to make a long story short, going through the crisis pregnancy center, they presented the gospel to me. And I received Christ. And really, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no
You
clue.
followed instructions. Pray this
What
prayer. Yeah.
I didn't know what that even meant. And I just I kept talking and going. I went to church a few times. I had my baby. And then I found myself again living with somebody, in just a bad situation. And then I just remembered while I was there and I was looking at my son, I was like, what am I doing? And I began to question. It's like, I don't know what I did back there, but whatever I did back there, I want that. I want to figure out what that is. And so I left that situation. It was very volatile. And I ended up moving in with my counselor. And then, I started going to church. And then I met my husband now. And he just grew up in a completely different world. We were on the same town on the two different sides of the tracks. And it's just totally different. But, whatever he saw in me, here we are, almost 35 years later, still married and have all these kids. And then in the process of that, the father just, as we were getting, kind of disenchanted at our fellowship, and then the Lord brought different people into our lives and started to show us things. And all of a sudden, I felt like I went from seeing miracles after I left that second situation, after I actually went and got serious about what this was, seeing miracles, to a dry place again, and wondering if God even existed when I was trying to figure out, what is this all about? Because it doesn't seem like we're following this Bible. And I began to realize if we're following the Bible, we're not following this Bible. I don't know what we're doing up here, but we're not following this Bible. And I found I hope I'm not talking too much, but one of the things, okay. One of the things that I realized is that after I became a believer and I got serious, I read through the Bible in a year, and I began to realize I knew more of the Bible than most people I talked to. And I thought that was shocking. Even my husband, I was like, how can I know you grew up in the church? How do I know more than you? And it's like, and I would, I'd be correcting people. No, that was that king or whatever. And I didn't even know really what I was reading either. I was still in that trying to discover phase. But I just knew that whatever this is, I seem to know more than most people here, and that's kind of scary. And
Because I don't know anything. I still feel that way. I don't know
yeah, but
anything.
I know, and I still do too. I still do
Yeah.
too, but at least I'm with fellowship and we all seem to be at the same place. We're still trying to figure that out where I just felt like it was just, I don't know. I was just, how can that be? And so, like I said, so then I had met a pastor that I had seen a couple years before, when I was pregnant with my son. After I was married to my husband, I was in my dry place. And I had met him one time at a Pentecostal church when I was pregnant with my son. And then I met him again at a homeschool fair right after I had my fourth baby. And my husband's pushing me around in the wheelchair because I couldn't walk. I just had a baby. And his wife came over to me and was like, oh, what happened? Anyway, make a long story short, here he was keeping the feast days, keeping the Sabbath. We reconnected. And then through him, he started to, explain stuff to us. And we're like, oh my gosh, and I mean, the veil just lifted. All of a sudden, all the Bible just came alive. And it's like, I just couldn't get enough of it. I remember we were just up all night long, my husband and I mean, when we did, oh shoot, what's that? What is that one? You stay up all night. It's, I want to say
Not Passover. Passover, some people stay up overnight with Passover.
Pentecost. It was Pentecost, so Shavuot.
Pentecost. Okay,
We
coming
were
up.
up. Yes, we were up all night that first year, just pouring over the scripture, one after another, after another, after. I couldn't get enough of it. I just could not. And then all of a sudden, yeah. And then to, make a long story short, we've been doing this now for 30 and 20, no, 28 years, 29. My son was like half a year old when we started this whole journey. And
Wow.
it's been really, really amazing. And one thing I really do appreciate is that the gentleman that first showed us about this, he was always really keen on read the Bible and pray and let Jehovah show you what it says before you listen to anybody. Get your own thoughts. Study, study, study. Know what you think, and then listen to somebody. And then it's like it becomes more of a sharpening, iron sharpen iron rather than following somebody. So
Yes. And that's one thing he's been speaking to me recently because we have with YouTube we have access to so many different teachings and everything. And you learn so much, but I realized that I was relying on those instead of just really seeking him as to what he wants me to learn in this season. Because as we're going, we do the Torah portions. And as I'm going through the Torah portions, it's, each week is so, key into what we're going through in our lives. It's so timely, always, every year. And so he has been having me pull back from listening to teachings and then just listening to him. So that's, such great, beautiful advice. I'm curious, how old's your oldest and how young is your youngest? Because I saw your Instagram post this morning that you have children still at home.
I do. I have 5 still at home. I have my oldest is 36 and my youngest is 7. So,
wow.
yeah.
And that's a long, long time. And now grandchildren. You do have grandchildren yet?
I have 5 and 2 coming in July. They're like due around the same time. So my daughter and my daughter-in-law are both expecting. So that'll be fun because they'll be right there next to each other in age.
That's so exciting. I have 7 myself. And so it's wonderful. And 4 live close and 3 live a little bit, 2 live all the way on the other side over in Maryland. Okay. And then my adult grandchild, she lived down in Los Angeles. So she's in the same state, but It's
Yeah.
about a 6 hour drive to visit. We go down a couple times a year to visit, but yeah, wow. So you've been at this for a very long time. So um you've raised a large family and answering all the questions through the years, you've developed a gift for making big spiritual truths into simple and accessible. So tell us how that skill led you to writing books for children.
Well, I think it was the leading of the Father. I was I don't know. I've always had a baby. I'm always holding my babies and nursing and doing everything there is to do with teaching and training your children and family life. And once my last one here, she got a little older, I was noticing that I'm not holding this baby that I'm so used to holding. And I felt like I had this extra time. I don't know why I thought this, but I was feeling like I have this.
Because you're not trying to keep them alive at this point. She's 7. She's able to be a little bit more self-sufficient. So yes, you do. You have more time because you're not just trying to keep them alive.
Right, exactly. So I'm like, so I started to pray and I was like, Father, what have I done? What can I do to help my husband? What have I done in the last, I mean, all I've ever done is stay home and raise children. And thankfully my husband has been able to do that.
Yeah.
He works hard and he allows me, I have that ability to stay home. And I just was praying, what can I do? What do I have to offer? What skill do I have? And so, he didn't really even answer me. I was doing what I do every year, and I was preparing for Passover, cleaning my house. And I went to bed one night, and it was like 3 a.m. in the morning. I suddenly just woke up, and I had this Passover rhyme in my head. I went down, I typed it out. It took me about 2 hours, wrote out this story. My husband woke up for work, came down. I said, Hey, could you look at this and tell me what you think? And he read it over and he goes, That's really good. I think you should publish it. I'm like, What? He's like, Because I think you should. I think that's really good. I'm like, I don't even know how do I even do that? I have no clue. He's like, Well, I'm just telling you, it's a good story. So I'm like, okay. And so then that's all they had to say. I started researching and figuring out how to do this thing. And, I ended up hooking up with a self-publishing school and they helped me publish my first book. But I did not use that story because as I was praying about it, I was thinking, to start at Passover almost seems like it's not the beginning. So, and then when I was looking at Leviticus 23, and this even goes back to, I had a revelation when I was about 50. I was hanging out the laundry and it sounds so humble. It's just such a humble thing. And I was just hanging out laundry. I live on top of a hill. And all of a sudden, I just had this download of everything I've been reading over the years. Not everything, but it just felt like everything. It's all this stuff. And I felt like he just took so much of things you just do because you're told to do it, to just keep the Sabbath day and, celebrate Passover, eat unleavened bread, all that we've been doing and count the Omer and all this stuff. And we've been doing this for years and years, and you do it just out of obedience because he says to do it. And you see things along the way for sure. I mean, we definitely saw truths along the way, but I felt like I just had this amazing download, and he took all of these things that we've been doing for all these years and just kind of put them into all these slots. This is what this means. This is what this means. This is what this means. And I was blown away. I looked around. I was like, wow. I mean, it's not poetic license. Everything does praise your name. I mean, this whole creation, everything. Like I just felt like, and I also felt like he was saying, look, you're 50. The priests would retire and they would teach the next generation. And you need to teach the next generation. And I don't really function that way. I don't really feel like God tells me things or Jehovah just kind of tells. I just kind of was just like, really? And I just felt like this confidence started to rise up in me that I never had before. I'm always like, well, I don't know. I would always say, I don't know. This is what I think, but I don't know. And I still feel that way because we're always getting new understanding, right? But
Yeah.
I felt like a different confidence was coming within me that you cannot say anymore that you don't know. You need to start telling people what you know, what you see. And I was kind of like, okay, I need to start doing this. And so then, yeah. And so then these books, as I was thinking about this series, ended up being a series. And I started thinking, well, Passover, I began to see, well, Leviticus 23, he says to keep the Sabbath, don't forget the Sabbath when you
Guard
start.
it.
Yes.
I love that he says, guard the Sabbath.
Yes. Yes. Guard it. And it's not like you're trading the Sabbath to do the feast days. Make sure you're doing them as you do the feast days. And I really think it's key because he tells us, I see two reasons. Two reasons are that, he's the God that sanctifies us and that he made the world in 6 days and rested the seventh. That's huge. If you think about it, at one time, I would have never said this, but I will say it now. I think evolution is satanic because he said, make sure that they remember, that you remember, I made the world in 6 days and rested the seventh. That's important to know. And evolution does not teach that. And it goes back to nothing. Our roots go nowhere. Everything becomes whatever's right in your own eyes, which goes right back to the garden. Whereas if you go back to creation, there's a creator and there's somebody you have to answer to for, this life. And there's an originator and he has truths and understanding for us. And so I think it's imperative, it's critical in our faith, I think, to remember that he made the world in 6 days and rested the seventh.
That's this keeping the Sabbath was people don't understand how profound it is.
Right.
And actually life altering. When you start, that's what we found is when we started actually keeping the Sabbath, guarding the Sabbath. And sometimes we don't do such a great job, and sometimes we do a much better. We're still learning how to keep the Sabbath,
Right.
But since we started and made it a priority, our lives have changed dramatically. My husband, who was convinced he couldn't read the Bible and couldn't comprehend it, he just is like, I don't understand it. I can't, it's too much. And he gets up every morning now and he reads the word on his own. And and then, we spend time in the word together, separate, and it's huge. And just it's like chaos left and peace came in. And, the peace that you're always promised in Christianity, that it's like, why, it promises if I'm saved, I should have perfect peace, the perfect peace of Christ.
Right.
But why don't I? And it's like, when you actually do Bible things in Bible ways, the breakthrough happens and then you experience that true peace. And it's like, I never want to go back ever. I never want to lose this.
Right.
So, and how beautiful is it that you were able to raise all these children in the way?
Yeah.
I mean, because it was from when they were little, so they've all been raised in the way. Have they all remained?
I didn't, at the time we did this, there was no internet, and it was just us in the Bible and a couple, one or two other families that we met on and off. And we were really green at this, green as can be, like your wall behind you. It's green.
Well, and so many people have come into the way over the past 5 years,
right?
8 years, 10 years.
Yeah.
But very few people were following it 20 something years ago.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So you are definitely something different than the norm.
Right. And that was hard on the children. It was hard to pull them, not allowing them to do sports, not going to the tournaments, and even my adult children now, I also feel, since my revelation when I was 50, I see things so differently than maybe what I did raising them.
Yes.
So maybe more legalistic. And now I feel more free in it. So, but that was, part of my journey
Right.
and my husband's journey. And now we're here. So,
Trying to listen and obey,
right,
you know, and that's it. It's we hear and we obey with the best that we have
right,
currently. And
exactly.
so, how beautiful.
So,
Okay, so
yeah,
let's get back to your book series
yes.
because
Okay.
so you're currently in the process of creating it, and you started you have your first release, Big HOORAYS, God's Creation Days. So that's what you were saying. You went back further. So he created it in 6 days,
Yeah.
beautiful, and he
Yeah.
rested on the seventh. So it started. How beautiful. So can you share what the book's about and why you chose to start? Well, you've already explained why you chose to start up with creation, but share a little bit about it.
Um, well, with this book, this is for ages 2 to 6. And my goal, I decided not to focus on the Sabbath per se, because I think it's a heart issue. And I want them to see that it's about rejoicing in Him. And so I didn't really focus on that. And there's been people that have picked up on that and they've actually liked that. Like they notice I kind of stop. I kind of just let it rest at giving God praise for each day. And that's what it does. It repeats itself. Let's thank God for this great day. Let's give God a big hooray. I also have had people, because I use the name God and I did not use Jehovah or Yahweh or whatever. And again, because in creation it was Elohim, and I decided to go with God. But I'm not afraid of the names. I'm not afraid of it. But for this particular book, I didn't touch it. And I thought it was more important for the children to rejoice in each day and to focus on the number 7, which they count through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And they're giving God 7 hoorays at the end. And so that's the focus of this book, is that because, creation is about being complete, finding completion in the Messiah. God's going to bring everything around to completion. There's so much, it says in Isaiah, the end is told from the beginning. I personally think that his plan of salvation is in this story. It's right here. Even day 1 starts in
Yeah.
darkness, ends in light. The world starts in darkness and ends with the light of the Lamb. So it's day 1 all the way through. His plan of salvation is right here. So since I'm dealing with the 6-year-olds, I kept it really simple, praising God for those days. Yeah.
That is so beautiful. And, with using God, because this is one of the things, of course, because I did the pendulum, it's like,
Mhm.
oh, that's not a name, it's a title, blah,
Right.
blah, blah,
Right.
and then I went through the different, it's like, Yahuwah, and then it's like, that doesn't feel right, and, kind of going through all the different. But
Yes.
when it comes down to it, this is making this book more accessible because I've
Mhm.
also realized when you're sharing the way
Right. Mhm.
and you're using the names that a lot of the Christian community will turn you off thinking that
Mhm.
you're just some weird offshoot and not even listen to anything you're saying. But if you're using words they understand,
Right.
it makes it
Mhm.
more accessible to them. And
Yes.
so
Yeah.
I like that, and like you
Yeah.
said, some people, the people that are really big, like, in the pendulum swing that I went to, it's like, oh, use God. No, that's a title. You should know this.
Right.
You've been following this
Mhm.
but
Right.
that's where the pendulum comes back down. It's like, you know
Mhm.
what? That's not something to get worked up on. Kind of like the
Right.
calendar. Calendar are the names. Let's not, cause dissension because of those
Yeah.
things. It's
Right.
just to bring unity, not dissension.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Um, so I love that, you're taking the kids through the feast days. You talked
Yeah.
about Leviticus 23, and this is our first year. I mean, we've been growing into this, and this is our first year. And our 9-year-old grandson actually got to spend Passover with us, and it
Oh,
was
nice.
beautiful. Yes, and he
Mhm.
got
Mhm.
to read. He is an avid reader, and he was so cute because when it was his turn to read, he stood up and got all poised, and it was just, it's like, you're really good at presenting, this is a real gift for you. And he has a love and a hunger for the word. So we're
That's
really
great.
looking forward, and he's really looking forward to spending it's like they're not Torah observant yet.
Mhm.
But he has such a curiosity about it because he does read his Bible.
Right.
He came to me one day and he goes, I can tell you all about Esther. I just sat and last night I read the whole book of Esther. I was like,
Right.
good for you. I can literally have conversations with him, deeper conversations, biblical conversations with him than
Mhm.
most adults, because
Yeah.
he actually reads it and it's
Right.
so precious. So you're taking the children through the feast days, from
Mhm.
Leviticus 23. What inspired you to use rhyme as a method, to explain these powerful truths?
You're gonna love this, Dr. Seuss.
I still have all my Dr. Seuss books. Yeah, I don't know the
I just
spiritual.
love rhyme. And those
That is
books, my
beautiful.
kids go back to him over and over again. And I can't say I'm necessarily really gifted at it. It almost seems like it is like God just downloads and then I write. It almost seems like that.
That's
I, you know,
perfect.
so yeah, so that's why. And I do think when it has a sing-song feel to it and they're rhyming, they'll remember.
It
And,
does. I
that's
remember raising my kids when I was trying to teach them their phone number. I made
yes,
it into a song because
yeah,
if you make it into a song, then it can, like you said,
yes,
sing songy. It
ex-
actually can stick in your brain. And
yes,
so,
yeah,
so, so
yeah,
your second book now. So you've got Big HOORAYS, God's Creation Days. Your second book is Let Them Go, God's Freedom
yeah,
Show. I
yes,
love that. And now it's currently being illustrated.
yep.
So the title's already said, oh, look at that.
This is a Canva design. This will not be what it looks like, but
Uh-huh.
I have it on here so I can send a file to my illustrator and I have a bunch of downloads of pictures and things and mood boards are what they're called. I actually missed I changed illustrators. I went from this one, so I'm in a new one now, and she is in the faith. Yeah, this is kind of neat to be working with her, and she has ideas and things. But yeah, so this is the next one. I think over 20 illustrations were downloaded to me yesterday. I had to figure out what
Um, how
where I'm going to put
exciting.
these. Yeah,
How,
it is great.
your third book I see focuses on unleavened bread. I just
Yeah,
remember.
yeah, well, because till I got done telling this story, them set it free, there wasn't much room for unleavened bread and first fruits, and it's a children's story. So
Right.
um again, this one pretty much just tells the Exodus story. And when this one was different from the first one, as I was looking for an illustrator. I ended up starting to get I started getting some lessons. I decided, well, if I can't find one, maybe I need to illustrate. So I started getting lessons and got an iPad and was trying to, with all my extra time. And,
Yeah.
but
Still
what,
raising children.
exactly. And what ended up happening is I began to see how they can interweave stories within stories. And I thought, oh, this is really neat how you can actually tell a story within a story. So with this one, I started out with a cat that is going to be on Pharaoh's side. So I don't actually see him. Here he is. I don't know if you can see it, but it's kind of dark. She sends these dark. There's a cat at the bottom peeking around. Let's see, he's right here. Okay.
Okay.
So he's going to be in the story, but we're not going to talk about the cat at all. He's just there. And you're going to see him with Pharaoh, and he's going to experience some of the plagues. He's going to go through some rough times. And he's going to be on Pharaoh's side because that's where he was at, and you're going to see him show up right where when they introduce Pharaoh, the one that's going to persecute them. And so then he comes through. He's going to be coming through the plagues. He's going to be experiencing the plagues. And at the end, when they have the actual Passover, you'll see the cat inside the doorway of the Hebrews. And then when they're leaving, he'll be in one of the carts and he'll be going with them out of Egypt. So, and then of course it's all in rhyme and they're going through it. And this one, they're counting to 10, where this one, they're counting, this one, they counted to 7. And this
Nice.
one, they'll be counting to 10. And
Beautiful.
this one, I introduced the name because God did introduce himself and said, he
Yes.
didn't know my name. So in this one, his name is here, Jehovah. I chose Jehovah. And that was basically because I was in Israel and I got to see the Codex. I forget what it's called, the Codex and Qumran. And I remember when my eyes were better, looking through this really dark glass, and I can read a little Hebrew, and they had the markings, and I saw Jehovah. If it's still the same, if the markings are still mean what they, what we are told that they say, I saw
Right.
Jehovah. So that's what I choose to go with. And I'm not like bent on it, like it has to
Right.
be. But this one I do have his name in, and I interchange it back and forth because I think, that he's called Elohim, he's called Yahweh or Jehovah. So I do that for the rhyme's sake and different things. But yeah, his name is introduced in this one. So
How
yeah.
beautiful. And I love that the cat started out with Pharaoh and ended up leaving with the Hebrews, like so many of the Egyptians did.
Yes,
Because,
right.
and that's what I'm reading and I'm going, whoa, they went through these plagues. They had several of them had to have gone, whoa, wait a minute. They
Yeah.
didn't experience this. I want what they have. I'm going with them
Yeah,
because I don't want to stay here with all of this.
right.
So that is so fun. So,
Yeah.
and your third book focuses on unleavened bread and first fruits.
Yeah.
And so
That's the fun.
that is so exciting. And now you're playing with a couple of different titles. What do
Mhm.
we what have we sat on today?
Well, at the moment, this one is going to be a little different because I mean, there's like inklings of it, unless you have some
Right.
insight into it. There really isn't a story that goes with unleavened bread and first fruits.
For sure.
It's kind of something we observe and do. They didn't have time for their bread to rise, so you're eating unleavened bread. You have it starting with the Sabbath and ending with the Sabbath. I honestly, in this year, which is kind of crazy, I've done this for all these years, but I had this aha moment, and we were talking about Passover as we were celebrating it this year, and I'm like, because we're always like, when does Passover actually start? Is it before unleavened bread? Is it right on unleavened bread? All that stuff that we all deal with. And I said, you know what? I think, I was talking to my husband, I said, do you think it's before unleavened bread? Like right before it, like right before, because the lamb was slain before the foundations of the world, right? And you have then 7 days, and you have this Sabbath that starts and the Sabbath that ends. And that's that whole 7-day idea that takes you back to creation. And I
Yes.
think, and the commandment to say, just make sure, it doesn't say this, I mean, this is me saying it, but it's like, make sure you don't eat leaven with the Passover. So it makes me think they're kind of like in that transition. They're not quite there yet. So just make sure when you eat it, you don't eat leaven with it, because you're going to go into this phase, because that lamb was slain, there's going to be no leaven and it's going to be complete. And it's going to be pointing back to the creator with the 7 days and just all that.
Well, and with that, they're eating it in haste. They're dressed
Right.
and ready, meaning they
Mhm.
already have their kneading bowls
Right.
already packed up and ready to
Yep.
go.
Mhm.
So yes, it would be unleavened at that point, of
Right.
course,
Right.
unless they had something left over but from I would
Right.
understand it, they
Right.
made everything that day.
Right.
So
Right.
yes,
Yeah.
how exciting. How very, very fun.
So
So
then, yeah, sorry.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
So then this one, I would have been praying about it, and I'm like, I don't know how to do this story. I tried this thing 2 or 3 times to write this story, and it just wasn't coming. And then I went to Kenya in February, took my books, 100 and some books with me. They went through Messianic Hope International and their Sabbath keeping fellowship in Kenya. And they really, yeah. And they also have 3 orphanages that they have started and they minister to. Well, one they started, sorry, and 2 that they minister to. They give and help them out. And so they were excited about my books. So I went over with them, and on the way over, there was a mix-up with my passport. And unfortunately, I got to the airport and didn't have my passport. And so I ended up having to go a day later. And I traveled by myself from from Dulles airport to Qatar and flew there. And here we had bad weather, and we waited in the plane for like 5 hours. It was just this big drama thing. I'm traveling by myself, and I'm just like I'm exhausted. We get to Qatar. Well, the flight that's supposed to take me into Nairobi, Kenya, we missed. So now Qatar Airways is setting us up in a hotel. So I'm by myself, and this gentleman who's a pastor and goes around and gives certificates notice, we ended up being like 2 seats away, saw that I was by himself and kind of took me under his international wing and kind of helped me out, which was really nice. And then, but anyway, in Qatar, I got the revelation to write this, and I wrote this in 2 hours. Again, in Qatar, after being exhausted, it's almost like he took me and plopped me there and just said, okay, there's no distractions.
Right.
Here's the story. And so I wrote it there. And this one's going to be different because almost every single rhyme has a scripture verse to it. And so I'm going to put not the scripture verse, I mean, not the whole verse, just, where you can find these rhymes. I want instead of having a whole story of just about this, I want the parents to see that this rhyme is based on the scripture, that you can actually follow this through. And so I was pretty excited about this when it was all said and done. I'm like, I went from having no clue how I was going to write this book to here it is.
Wow.
And, so this book is, because you are dealing with unleavened bread, you're dealing with your heart issues, sin, and you're also, first fruits, Yeshua, who rose from the dead, he's our first fruits. So I take it back to, Jehovah. I actually really like this. Would you like to hear it?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
I wouldn't mind. And be honest, be brutally honest what you think, because I don't want any of my stories to be unscriptural, or something that it wouldn't resonate with. So here we go. It's 700 words long. And this one starts with the deepest kind of love, unleavened bread and first fruits. Jehovah is the one who made everything. He's the only true God and the only real King. His heart is for all to be good, loving him and others like we should. He tells you how, it's what I've heard through the Bible, God's inspired word. But there's this ugly thing God calls sin, the naughty things that hide within. It's when we do the opposite of what God says is right. It's doing what you want, what is right in your sight. It's breaking his commands and saying, it's okay. God will understand if I do it my way. But God said, this thinking is not right at all. It caused man to sin and mankind to fall. Sin is being unloving when you're really mad. It's when you sulk in the corner when you're really sad. It's the opposite of being kind and loving. It's holding a grudge, pushing and shoving. Sin is saying no when you should be sharing. It's teasing people when you should be caring. These actions and thoughts puff you up like yeast-filled bread, with sinful me thoughts that fill your head, with things you know are not right, things that dull your shining light. What do we do about this nasty sin that hides inside deep within? The Bible tells us of a special day when Jehovah took those sins away. It was a time the powers of darkness ruled the day, when the King's Son died and took your sins away. This act of the deepest kind of love, shown by God's Son from above, who gave up his life so you can win, this battle against that naughty sin. God can now throw that sin far, far away, as far as the east is from the west, they say. Those sinful thoughts and actions that once filled your head, filling it up like risen bread, can leave and cause the bread to deflate, to become like matzah, the flatbread you bake. All you need to say and do is believe on the one who died for you. He promises to be with you each day, especially helping you when you pray. Because when you pray, he says he will be near. He draws close and is, let me see that again. Because when you pray, he says he will hear. He draws close and is quite near. You will always be his special friend. His love for you will never end. His love for you will fill you up until it overflows your cup. When you are filled with this kind of love, the kind that only comes from above, there's no room for that nasty sin inside. There's no place for that nasty sin to hide. Once you've been cleansed from your sin, it will try so hard to come back in, tempting you to be bad when you're good, trying to stop you from doing what you should. All you need to say is no and tell that sin it has to go. Not only did his son take that sin away, Jehovah raised him from the dead on the third day. Death cannot hold him down because no sin in him was found. Since that is what gives death its grip, his son was able to give it the slip. It was a glorious day, one never seen or heard, erasing everyone's sin. It sounds absurd. Yet this really happened, and it caused quite a stir, making all things right from what they once were. Because he was sinless and his love was so strong, only he could erase all the things done wrong. This fulfilled God's eternal plan, the Feast of Firstfruits and saving man. For all who have been given God's life-filled breath no longer need to fear the day of death. All you need is to believe he died for you and walk in his laws by his spirit, it's true. And you too will have eternal life, no longer full of sin and inner strife. So when you lay down your head tonight, give Jehovah thanks for winning this fight.
Okay, you literally brought me to tears. So brutally honest. Wow. And I have my one grandson is 2, his sister is 4,
Yes.
and they're in real naughty stages right now. And these are the things that I've been trying to share with them is like, you know, you need to work on being
Yes.
kind and being generous and giving, and we just started a new thing called the gotcha, and I made little tickets, and when I catch them doing, and all of a sudden they're doing kind things, they're sharing their toys. Well, the 2-year-old's still having a hard time grasping it because he's 2. He's like, no, it's mine. But I can see where as I'm listening to this, I'm picturing reading it to those 2 especially, and it's just like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. It's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Oh my gosh, I love it.
You're welcome. Thank
It
you.
is
Thanks.
beautiful. So
Thank you.
what, this is so beautiful for families. And like, it's like, okay, I'm going to be getting these books because I have grandchildren that are right there. And,
Yeah.
but so what is your hope and prayer for families, who read your books? What do you want children and their parents to walk away with?
Well, first of all, I do want the books to speak to both because God, we are children, right? Really, we all are children of God, and his message really is simple. And I really want these books to be child accessible, but I want it speaking to the parents as well. And that's why I tried so hard to keep it scripturally sound so that people can glean from it. And hopefully, my hope is that they actually go to the word and really search it out. And the other thing, what was I saying? So that was, because the feast days, the reason why I decided to do the feast days was I believe that Jehovah has a plan from beginning to end. And the feast days are all about that, right? You have creation, and then you have tabernacles, and we go into our permanent dwelling. And that's his whole salvation story. And it was from the beginning. And so you can see that the end is told from the beginning.
Yeah.
So I want them to see that. I want them to see that God makes sense, that God has a plan, nothing has taken him by surprise, and that it's easy to understand when you understand it, when you can really see the connections, when you can just go, oh, that's what that means. Oh, that's my desire. That has been my desire. And I hope, I have two actually, I don't know how long, it'll take for me to do this, but I have this younger children's series for 2 to 6 year olds. And then I actually have another Passover one that's 9 chapters long, all in rhyme with 60 scripture verses. And it's all
Wow.
edited, ready to go. But I wanted to get this series out first, I think. And that one's on hold. So as soon as this series gets out, I like to do it for the older children. And I love that because literally I reference everything in that entire book. And you could go to the back of that book and literally just read the scriptures from top to bottom, and you have an entire plan of salvation right there, all in creation.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful. Well, and when you were reading it, the part where it talked about believe in the Son,
Yeah.
and keep his commandments, because
Yes.
that's the part that
Right.
it's like with this whole grace faith thing, it's like, oh, all we have to do is believe and be
Right.
saved. And it's like, no, who is the dragon wroth with in Revelation? He's wroth with
Right.
those who have the testimony of Yeshua and keep the commandments. It's a
Absolutely.
package deal. And right there, you're putting that right there. And that was the first thing I thought is, oh, this is going to speak to the parent reading it too. The one
Yeah.
who's like, and you're going to have the references where they're going to, well, where does it say that? Well, right here. This is where it says it.
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
black and white. And
Yeah.
Yeshua did not come down to change.
Yeah.
It's like, why would the Father be so descriptive and so lay out such detail of his way, how to walk in his way, just to
Right.
have his son come and go, yeah, just kidding, never mind, you don't have to do all that stuff. It's
I
like,
know it doesn't make sense.
especially when he's like, I am the Father in one. When you've seen me, you've seen the Father.
Yes.
I do not change, same yesterday, today, and
Yeah.
forever.
Mhm.
So that
Yeah.
is just, I love your books. So now you've said before the books are meant to bolster faith and build understanding and bring joy.
Yeah.
And so you've already explained, how the Sabbath and the feast days lay the foundation for y'all's plan.
Mhm.
It really is. Like you said, you can put all of that, and it's the whole salvation plan right there in the feast days. Now, right now we're counting down the Omer, waiting
Right.
for Shavuot, and
Mhm.
halfway there. So, well,
Yeah.
at least in the calendar I'm following, we're halfway.
I don't know. We always play catch up. I'm terrible. It's like, I sit here and talk about these feast days. Like, you know what? We forgot to do this yesterday. We're 3 days
Right?
behind.
I know. That's what I have, an actual Omar counter on my phone, and it's just like, oh, I haven't crossed it off the refrigerator one yet. I need to get out and cross those off. I actually let my 9-year-old grandson cross them off the other day
Yeah.
because he's like, "What's
Yeah.
this?" And I was able to explain to him what it was and
Yeah.
what we're counting down to and everything. So he got to cross them off. So I
That's
may let
nice.
them do that when they come and visit. It's like, "Oh, catch grandma up. You can go cross them off." So, okay. So for families excited to dive into your books like I am, where can they find Big HOORAYS and follow along as you release your more titles in the series?
Okay. Well, my website is a good place to start.
Yes.
grandmapatch.com or .org. Either one will get you to my website.
Okay.
And also, if you become a part of my newsletter, I I have a part where I talk about where the books are going, if it's going to a library or what's going on with the next book or whatever. And then I usually have some thoughts on the feast day we're in. And it's adult geared. So
Okay.
it's to teach, to I don't know if I say teach the families, but just to give some adult, because as parents, I want to support the parents. They need
Yes.
to be teaching their children, and they need to understand what this is so they can teach their children. When I look back to when I was doing this, I was learning it with my children. I was trying to figure this out. Whereas if I could have had something that was a little more, I just could get a little more understanding, that would have been nice. But at the same time, that's what it's for. It's to kind of, and I usually I connect dots in that. I'll go from the old to the new and kind of connect dots for people. So right now, I think this month, and so I got to write it, but I was going to do one on the harvest and talking about, how we're in that time period. I honestly think we're in that time period, like the harvest.
Yes. I agree. Look how many people are coming into the way.
Yes.
It's just like, it is
Yeah.
really, that it's funny because how many years, well, you've been doing this for so long, but I spent 40 years in the Christian church.
Right.
So before, coming into to Torah. And so, oh, revival's coming, having no idea what
Right.
true revival is he's bringing the hearts of his people back to him. And I see it happening, and it's so exciting to see so many people coming into the way. It is really, really.
It is amazing. It is amazing.
Yes.
I think this internet has caused information in general to explode, and that's what I see, man. When this thing hit the fan, I mean, everybody's like, oh, there's so much here and there's so much there for people, and they're just taking it in. It's amazing.
I have such a love-hate because part of me is like, I want nothing to do with this. I want to get a flip phone, not have this box here.
Yeah.
But in fact, I was having that conversation with him last night. I couldn't sleep, and I'm like, I don't want to do social media. And he's like, you are using social media to do exactly what I want you to do. You're sharing with others. And that's my, is to share him and to share how amazing life, true, loving him with all your heart, mind, soul, body, and strength. And when you come to that, then you really want truth. You don't want the traditions, you want the truth.
Right.
And so
I'm with you.
I'll be sharing all of your social media, and be signing up for your newsletter, because that's exciting, because it's true. I mean, we've spent the last 4 years trying to figure out how to implement, but we're practicing. We're practicing, and it's memorializing. And the whole purpose of it is to teach the younger generations how to walk in the way. Boy, what it would have been like had we been raised, it's like, I was like, man, I wish I'd have been raised Jewish, because at least I would have some comprehension or understanding of all of the stuff that now I'm having to go, oh, that's how it's supposed to be done. So, well, thank you so much for sharing your heart, your story. Your books are just amazing. And what a blessing it's going to be for my grandbabies. I'm going to be all selfish on this, and for my grandbabies alone. But this is perfect to help parents teach these stories, because what does it say right in Passover? The whole purpose is to tell these stories to your children. That's what we're supposed to be doing as we sit down with Passover meal, is recounting what he's doing and what he wants us to do. So everyone out there, if you're looking for a way to teach your little ones about creation and the feast days, then you're going to, and the love for Messiah and how they all point to Messiah. That's, so keep your eyes on this growing series, and it's going to be something really, really special. So, like I said, I will go in and put, when I publish this will be going out next week.
Okay.
Next Thursday, a week from today. And then I will put all of your social media stuff in there as well. And so thank you so much.
Could I just quick say something?
Please, yes.
I forgot to mention that my book series, when you have all the books, there'll be a rainbow. My first one's going to be red. My second one's orange, and so forth. So that when you can look on your shelf, you'll have the full rainbow, all 7 colors.
Yes, all 7 colors. And that's going to make my granddaughter so excited, because she loves rainbows.
Right.
So yes, she's going to love these books. And truly, she's the one. She really needs these books. She reminds me so much of myself as a child, and
Yeah.
I wish I'd had this kind of,
Yeah.
resources and been taught these things at that age, because my life would have been totally different. But my life is the way it is because of how it needed to be, so that now I
Absolutely.
can share these things with my
Yep.
grandchildren. So
Yep.
thank you
Amen.
for sharing that. That is
Yeah.
super exciting. Well, have a blessed day,
You
and thank
too.
you again. And I will I'll send you the links and everything next week when I put them up. It'll be
All
on
right.
Spotify and YouTube.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It was a joy talking to you.
It was such a pleasure. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.